Survival horror. It's a genre that's seen ups and downs throughout the years in terms of popularity, quality, and style. And we're going to be taking a look at a game from a series that doesn't always get the same recognition as its peers. Today, we're examining Fatal Frame. Not the more well-known Fatal Frame 2 either, but the original. Honestly, this was a game I'd been meaning to fully check out for years, so it was nice to have the excuse to go back and try out a potentially lesser-known classic. I only had the vaguest memories of this game from back in the day. I believe I may have rented it at a Blockbuster at one point, but I never really got into it until now. So how does this first installment hold up nearly 20 years later? Let's find out. Fatal Frame was developed and published by Tecmo and released in 2002 in North America for the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. The game starts with the main character's brother, and forgive the potential butchering of any names and or locations, Mafuyu, a folklorist investigating the Himuro mansion to find novelist Junsei Takamine. After briefly exploring the mansion with his special family heirloom, which we'll get to later, Mafuyu disappears. Cut to 2 weeks later, where Mafuyu's sister, Miku, fears the worst and takes it upon herself to explore the mansion to find her missing brother. Despite this game's T rating, the tone of the actual story is a bit disturbing. I have no idea how this game actually got a T rating outside of the lack of gore. Really, this game is just one mutilated corpse away from being set in Silent Hill. Fatal Frame is also based on true events, which is... it's not true. It's just not. This is just marketing from the localization, and it's complete utter bull. I have no idea why they thought this tagline was a good idea. Anyways, Fatal Frame is a traditional survival horror game. Fixed camera angles, tank controls, limited visibility, backtracking, puzzles, what you would expect from that genre back in the early 2000s. Basically, if you've played classic Resident Evil, then you've played Fatal Frame to some degree. The core of Fatal Frame is not wholly original. The main difference between Fatal Frame and similar games within the genre is instead of using guns or melee weapons, Miyu uses the camera obscura for the majority of interactions. This camera brings up a first-person perspective that allows you to deal damage to hostile spirits, capture certain hidden or non-violent ghosts to fill out your album, and solve puzzles. The first-person perspective is even helpful for navigating the mansion. The camera uses different types of film, all dealing different amounts of damage, and the very basic Type 14 film can be refilled at a save point. The more powerful the film, the less likely you are going to find refills. The rarer film, the more damage you can do. So you might want to save your rarer film for more difficult ghost encounters. The camera stats can be upgraded with experience points, with options to upgrade range, speed, and damage. Bonus functions are limited to the amount of rare spirit stones you currently have in your inventory, even if you have the upgrade. Personally, I only ever use the paralyze function because of this limitation. I would have enjoyed a little more freedom experimenting without sacrificing main camera upgrades, but it might have made the game a bit too easy. Puzzles can be solved using the camera to take a photo of, let's say, a locked door, which will in turn give you a photograph of an area that contains the solution. I really like this mechanic and how it's implemented. You spend so much time backtracking and going through the same hallways and corridors that you really do get a feel for the location. It's not dissimilar to old Resident Evil games. So when you take a photo of a locked door, you instinctively know that, oh, I need to go here to solve this puzzle. Of course, there are more traditional puzzles that require you to possess items that are used as keys and solving riddles, but the camera functionality with some of these puzzles is a nice little addition. One aspect I do feel could have been better implemented is the ghost capturing. I mentioned earlier that there are non-violent and hidden ghosts. Most of the time, both hidden and non-violent ghosts are acceptably challenging. By that I mean, if you pay attention to your surroundings, you can capture the optional spirits and get extra experience out of it. However, there are a few non-violent ones that disappear way too quickly and are just in unreasonable spots. There's one ghost that will run past some sheets that took several reloads to even get into proper frame, let alone capture it on film. Not that it really matters, since you can't even get 100% completion on your first playthrough, which is also annoying. I don't know, they're not mandatory or anything, but I get a little peeved when I see a ghost, miss it, and feel compelled to reload to an earlier save point just to capture it. I will say I do enjoy the camera as a gameplay component, and even as a weapon. Without the typical arsenal of a Resident Evil or even Silent Hill game, Fatal Frame forces you up close and personal with the ghosts. This works. There really is a sense of dread when dealing with these spirits so intimately. You have to get up in their faces and you have to confront them. Despite the camera offering a first-person perspective that's not dissimilar to a first-person shooter, the camera, I think, actually works in this context. It doesn't detract from the horror elements, for the most part. There is one major problem with Fatal Frame, and that it's eventually you get used to it. That's a common problem with all horror games. Even in titles like Dead Space, which I consider to be one of my favorite horror franchises, had this problem. Fatal Frame, at least the original, loses its luster with combat fairly quickly. Encounters with ghosts are mostly one-on-one affairs and aren't very difficult to deal with. Simply identify, keep ghosts in frame, do high damage shot, run back, repeat. You do this for 90% of the ghosts encountered, and the game only rarely throws a curveball. Despite the rarity of higher powered film, the Type 14 that reveals at the save station is really all you need for most encounters. In fact, I believe I only actually died a total of maybe 3 times throughout my 2 playthroughs. One of those deaths coming from an enemy that can one-shot you, which I didn't know because every other night you're supposed to be touched by this enemy, so whatever. The abundance of ammo and generosity with healing items makes this game a little too easy after the first hour or two. Not that there's anything wrong with the game being easy, I just think it takes away from some of the potential tension that could have been had within the context of the combat. Sometimes I feel like Luigi had a harder time taking out ghosts than Miku does. Combat shortcomings aside, I actually believe Fatal Frame makes up for it in other areas. The atmosphere, for example, is just phenomenal. For an early PS2 release, Fatal Frame just oozes a very thick and distressing sense of dread. The Himuro mansion is not a pleasant place to be. You really do get a feeling that this place has been abandoned for a very long time, that there's a good reason for the abandonment, and that you should leave. The floors creak and groan as Miku traverses the mansion. The background music, while something I might not listen to by itself, is eerie and really helps set the tone. The ghosts themselves sound appropriately terrifying as well. Overall, the sound design is top-notch, and audio is so very important when creating a horror game, and they really nailed down that aspect. Visually, this game looks just as good as it sounds. I was actually surprised that it was originally released in 2001 because it looks better than some titles that came out years later. I don't know if this game was supposed to be more of a tech demo than an actual game, sort of like Siren, but they did a fantastic job regardless. The ghosts themselves are designed very well and appropriately creepy. Some of my favorite designs being the long-armed man and the woman with a broken neck. The cutscenes are pretty damn scary too. Just take a look at this one real quick.
She's the last.
While the English voice acting may be a little bit dated, the actual cinematics are very well done, and I've briefly mentioned the story, but I think that it's one of the stronger aspects of the game. There's this whole thing with a ritual that went horribly wrong after a botched sacrifice that opens a mouth to hell and causes 1,300 or so people to die. It's pretty intense for a T-rated title, to be honest. I actually advise you pay attention to the collectibles you gather throughout the game, or read up on the Fatal Frame wiki if you're interested in the story, because it is a really enjoyable story. There's also a few post-game unlockables, such as a mission mode, a sound test option of all things, and the option for New Game Plus, which is always appreciated. When people talk about Fatal Frame, they're usually talking about Fatal Frame 2, or that Wii game that never saw an official English translation. They don't talk about the original, at least in my experience. But having now played through several Fatal Frame games at the time of recording, I feel the original deserves some recognition. Sure, There are some disappointments here and there, especially with the combat, but that doesn't mean it takes away from the overall package. I played through this game twice, and you know what? I'm a fan. Fatal Frame is a very good, very Japanesey horror game that I think has been unfairly overlooked. If you've only ever played the classic Resident Evils or Silent Hills, then I think Fatal Frame might just be right up your alley. In fact, the PS2 seemed to have a lot of horror games similar to Fatal Frame, now that I think about it, that were just a little bit overlooked. Obscure and Rule of Rose come to mind. I don't know why this series is more well known. By all accounts, I can only find that it sold okay. There's 5 installments, so it must have done well enough, but I don't think a single entry on the PS2 or original Xbox had a greatest hits or platinum re-release, which is kind of disappointing and neat at the same time. Disappointing because that means more people haven't experienced this game, and neat that I can say I'm one of the few that have. Some sort of hipster cred, I guess. Anyway, Fatal Frame is a horror game worth tracking down if you want to try some old school survival horror. Getting an original Xbox or PS2 copy might be a bit of a hassle, so I'd recommend just picking up the digital copy on the PS3. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for Fatal Frame 2: Crimson Butterfly. Hello and welcome to the Rabid Retrospect Games in Slate video thing that is unscripted. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did watch it, please leave some feedback. I want to get better at making these type of videos. They're something I've always wanted to do. I've just never had the time. Being a full game and cutscene movie channel, I guess you'd say, I don't always have time to do content like this because typically I cover one game a week. Typically, it takes anywhere from like 5 to 20 hours to record everything, and then it takes a few hours to edit, and then it takes maybe 5 to 20 hours to render everything out. Like the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, for example, took like 10 hours to render out, probably about 5 to 7 hours to edit, and then it took about 20 to 30 hours to record all of that footage. So I don't always get time to do these type of videos, but I'd like to get to the point where I can do one a week at least. So yeah, and I do understand this is probably sandwiched on the main channel. So I am making a secondary channel that is going to be primarily for reviews and this type of edited content. And I want to keep it at one a week, maybe 3 a month, if at all possible. And we're first going to do the Fatal Frames on PS2. I've always wanted to cover the Fatal Frame games, and this is just a good excuse. After, I think I'll either move on to Dead Rising, Spyro, or Dead Space. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to get too pigeonholed in the horror. I want to branch out into other genres, but I do love horror, and it's kind of an easy target to kind of get started, so yeah. But I appreciate you all watching this video. It does mean a lot. I put a lot of effort into this video and the upcoming Fatal Frame 2. I hope these are good, and I hope you all can give me advice on how to get better. I want to make more content like this, not just my walkthroughs, not just my cutscene movies. I want to branch out. It's, you know, just creatively, I guess you'd say, which is kind of lame to say out loud, but I would like to branch out and do different things. Not that I'm not grateful that I'm able to be a walkthrough channel as a job. I would just like to branch out and try other things. So, yeah, I appreciate you all watching. Should have Fatal Frame 2 next week. And yeah, I really hope you all enjoyed this video. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch any of my content. I'm still blown away that I have 300-some thousand followers on YouTube. I remember when I thought 20,000 was going to be the limit to what I could hit. And here I am. I've been fortunate enough to where this is my full-time job, and working on YouTube videos, I've been able to, you know, buy my house. I've been able to do all sorts of things, and I'm truly appreciative of any of the support you all have given me throughout the years. So thank you for that, and I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I shall catch you all on the next video. Take care. Have a great day.